The lost ending of the Lord's Prayer. Americans must watch this hidden truth. You've recited it your entire life, since childhood. In churches, at funerals, before meals, "Our Father, who art in heaven." The words flowed effortlessly, familiar, comforting, sacred. But what if the version you've always known developed over time and might feel incomplete in certain views? The ending you're familiar with may not capture every nuance Jesus originally conveyed in that upper room setting, with differences emerging through translations, liturgical uses, and centuries of tradition, not always from ill intent, but from natural historical developments influenced by councils and practices. You've been given a form that sometimes seems like a segment offered as complete, a circle missing its final arc, an inhale without full release. Tonight, we'll examine what some scholars and traditions propose was adjusted or de-emphasized. Not to introduce something wholly unfamiliar, but because your spirit may already recognize it, it has always sensed the gap. You've noticed that subtle unfinished quality every time you reach Amen. The silence afterward can feel abrupt, hollow, distant from the divine. That sensation isn't your error. It's the lingering trace of what certain lines of interpretation suggest was softened or set aside. By the video's close, you won't merely hear about possible shifts. You'll sense the return. You'll voice it and grasp why, in historical settings, certain aspects faded from prominence. This isn't purely academic. It's reclamation. A moment to pause amid current spiritual movements, like the 2025 to 2026 revivals, where groups are shedding materialism and pursuing deeper self-awareness, as seen in conversations on platforms like X. For 2 millennia, the Lord's Prayer has been humanity's most uttered prayer. Billions across eras and lands voicing the same lines. Yet few realized the familiar form was refined, adjusted, streamlined to foster cohesion in growing communities. While this helped create unity, it sometimes sidelined varied contemplative perspectives. The early church didn't merely safeguard Jesus' words. It interpreted them through assemblies and customs. It selected which gospels circulated widely and which remained obscure, guided by doctrinal harmony. The Lord's Prayer followed a similar path. What you recite today isn't precisely what the disciples first heard. It differs from what mystics shared in Egypt's deserts. It varies from the earliest preserved texts before major councils and statements of faith. Something shifted or receded, replaced by a term offering finality rather than underscoring an inward reconnection. Aim meaning so be it, marks closure. But some understandings of the original suggest the prayer didn't merely stop. It circled back into the speaker's core. It sealed a connection between heaven and earth, breath and divine essence, parent and child. That closure felt profound, perhaps overly empowering for centralized systems. Because grasping the prayer's fuller mystical sense would reveal the kingdom isn't solely a distant afterlife destination. It's a reality you access through remembrance and alignment, echoing today's spiritual trends toward inner truth and release from illusion, as discussed in 2026 posts on self-knowledge and divine connection, like those from Xenostar on X. Historical refinements may have redirected focus. They substituted an inward turn with a communal close. They transformed what some view as a vibrant practice into a more uniform rite. For centuries, you've voiced a prayer that, in certain readings, halts short of full realization. The issue isn't proving one definitive change. Scholarly views differ. It's exploring what evidence from text suggests shifted and possible reasons. Let's examine something that challenges assumptions about Christianity's central prayer, drawing from over 5,800 Greek New Testament manuscripts showing textual diversity per textual criticism research. We'll look at the ancient documents themselves. Not the King James your elders shared, not church handouts, but the oldest Greek copies scholars study in detail. Consider Codex Sinaiticus and Codex Vaticanus, both from the 4th century, the earliest near-complete New Testaments, discovered in the 19th century and housed in the British Library and Vatican Library. In Matthew 6 verses 9 to 13 in these texts, the Lord's Prayer appears. Here's the notable point. The familiar closing, "For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever," is absent. It's not present. You can verify this in digital archives from those libraries. The earliest Greek Matthew texts lack that doxology. It entered later copies, likely for worship settings, adding a celebratory note in public use, as seen in somewhat later manuscripts like Codex Washingtonianus, late 4th/early 5th century. The same holds for Luke 11 verses 2-4, no doxology, just petitions ending quietly. Reflect on that. The prayer you've known includes a phrase missing from the oldest gospel witnesses. Scribes or liturgical needs likely inserted it for ceremony and group recitation. But if that addition came later, what did the original focus or close emphasize? To explore, we step beyond Greek to Aramaic, the tongue Jesus probably used. Jesus spoke Aramaic, the everyday language of 1st century Judea, not Greek or Latin or English. It was how he taught along Galilean paths, in synagogues, in Gethsemane, and when instructing disciples on prayer. In 1945, near Nag Hammadi, Egypt, buried codices surfaced. The Nag Hammadi Library, 13 volumes with 52 texts concealed around 350 to 400 AD. These weren't standard writings. They were early Christian materials hidden, perhaps by monks facing doctrinal pressures from emerging mainstream views. Why conceal them? Institutional priorities sometimes clashed with teachings implying direct divine access, without intermediaries, as noted by figures like Irenaeus critiquing alternatives. Monks preserved what they valued, burying them for future discovery. Among them, texts like the Gospel of Thomas and Gospel of Philip, offering glimpses into early prayer and divine relationship. Scholars note themes of inner fulfillment not as prominent in canonical Gospels. Gospel of Thomas, saying 3. The kingdom is inside you and outside you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are children of the living Father. The kingdom isn't future or external, it's present, realized through self-recognition. This aligns with interpretations seeing the Lord's Prayer as awakening inner presence, not distancing God. It resonates with 2025 to 2026 shifts towards self-knowledge and illusion's end, per Zenostar on X. Councils like Nicaea, 325 AD, prioritized doctrinal unity. Teachings stressing inner gnosis over institutional reliance face scrutiny. If the kingdom is accessible now through awareness, what role remains for hierarchy? The desert preserved it. In 1945, light returned, fueling modern questions about authority. This mystical thread endured not only in buried texts, but in lives of dedicated early Christians, linking to today's revival of contemplative practices amid institutional doubts, as in 2026 studies on breath work and clergy challenges, religions and DPI. While cities saw churches rise and power consolidate, another stream flowed in Egypt's and Syria's deserts from the 3rd century. Thousands, desert fathers and mothers, sought unmediated communion. Anthony, Evagrius Ponticus, Mary of Egypt. No structures, just silence, prayer, encounter. They prayed the Lord's Prayer differently, not rushed, but as breath rhythm. Evagrius taught ceaseless prayer as breathing God literally. Inhale divine presence, exhale what obscures it. They practiced hesychasm, stillness, repeating phrases slowly until words faded into breath. In that rhythm, they met God inwardly, not distant or solely mediated. Oral traditions among them suggested the prayer didn't close within. It returned awareness inward, completing union. That wasn't scripted widely. It was lived, passed teacher to student. As institutions strengthened, such independence faced marginalization. Breath practice yielded to recitation. Inner focus complemented ritual. Yet remnants persisted, awaiting readiness. That moment arrives now, especially in 2020 SAXS push against commodified faith and toward alignment. Zenostar on X. Before revealing the proposed emphasis, consider how Constantine's era reshaped teachings for unity, mirroring 2026 debates on institutional influence. Talbert Swan on X. By 325 AD, Constantine legalized Christianity. Edict of Milan 313, then convened Nicaea for doctrinal standardization amid empire needs. Diversity gave way to uniformity. Canon decisions weighed institutional fit. Did teachings support hierarchy? Foster dependence? Mystical self-sufficiency challenged that model. Emphasis shifted toward external mediation. Early writers like Tertullian noted varied prayer forms. Post-Nicaea, standardization prevailed. Aramaic adds depth. Semitic roots layer meanings. One word holds breath/wind/spirit. No strict physical-spiritual divide. Scholars like Neil Douglas Klotz highlight mystical layers. Abwan, our Father, evokes source/womb-like origin. Shemaiah, heaven as light realm. Malkutha, kingdom as alignment. Ruach unifies breath/spirit. Nahura as consciousness light. Reconstructed emphasis. For yours is the spirit and the light forever. Not distant claim, living affirmation. Divine breath animates you. Light awakens as your awareness. Such realization empowers directly, challenging mediated systems. Translations into Greek/Latin often emphasize separation. Evidence spans traditions. Didache, early teaching, shows practice variations. Syriac churches retain Aramaic echoes. Ethiopian Orthodox preserve mystical elements. Sites like Dur Europos reveal experiential worship. Outside Roman reach, deserts, Ethiopia, Celtic areas, mystical strands lasted longer. Institutional shifts complemented inner with outer, sometimes critiquing mystics. Eckhart condemned 1329, Parit executed 1310. Truth endured in breath, resurfacing now amid 2026 diaspora awakenings. Muad'Dib 2000 on X. The prayer structure suggests upward call, descent to needs, then return. Internalizing presence. Without return, it feels open. Jesus' words affirm oneness. John 10:30, 14:10. The proposed close seals that. For yours is the spirit and the light forever breathing through me. Logic aligns with kingdom within. Luke 17 verse 21. Spirit indwelling. Romans 8 verse 11. Adaptations may have favored cohesion over empowerment. Imagine 30 AD Jerusalem upper room. Disciples ask to pray. Jesus offers Aramaic practice, aligning breath with divine. Ending affirms union. Revolutionary. God breathes through you. Disciples spread it. Then empire integration shifted toward control. Constantine, Nicaea standardized. Mystics retreated, preserving fuller sense. Power required hierarchy. Teachings adjusted. In slavery, adapted versions promoted submission. Yet in hush harbors, direct encounter persisted, breath, spirit unchainable. This confirms ancestral knowing, direct connection. Who benefits from dependence? Institutions historically. Direct access disrupts tithing, mediation. Movements stressing inner experience faced opposition. Gnostics, Cathars, mystics. Methods. Textual choices, translations flattening layers, councils defining orthodoxy, doctrines reinforcing need, language barriers. Enslaved Africans faced similar controls, yet truth survived in spirituals, ring shouts. Now reclaim. You're not broken begging. You're divine child, breathing God's ruach, shining Nahura. For descendants interpreting as covenant heirs. Deuteronomy 28 symbolic readings. Restoration dawns. Deuteronomy 30. Your royalty, chosen free. Speak it. For yours is the spirit and the light forever breathing through me. No intermediary needed. You're the temple. 1 Corinthians 3 verse 16. Royal priesthood. 1 Peter 2 verse 9. This is return, not rebellion. Reclaim your heritage. The breath is divine. The light is yours. Awake.